Pluto Attacks by Janson Davies. Chapter 1. The Last Laugh. The transmission arrived without encryption, without warning, and without mercy. Across the galaxy, screens flickered, holograms glitched mid-sentence, starships paused in orbit. Even the black holes seemed to hold their breath. A jagged silhouette emerged from the static, tall crystal white, cloaked in refracted starlight. Its voice was a low, glacial hum, vibrating through every frequency known to sentient life. You called us small. You stripped our name. You mined our bones and mocked our silence. But Pluto remembers. And Pluto strikes. On Earth, schoolchildren stared at their tablets, mouths agape. On Mars, generals reached for weapons. On Neptune, priests wept. And on Pluto, the Plutonians began to rise. They had waited centuries beneath the ice, not dormant, watching, not forgotten, erased. Their cities, carved from frozen methane and ice, pulsed with ancient energy. Their minds, linked through crystalline neural webs, burned with one shared emotion: rage. High Executor Koplor stood atop the spire of reckoning, his armor glinting with embedded memories, each shard a moment of humiliation, each plate a record of betrayal. Behind him, the Plutonian legions assembled in silence. No chants, no salutes, just the cold efficiency of vengeance. "Target Mercury," Koplor commanded. The command echoed through the Plutonian fleet, 1,000 ships shaped like polished teardrops. Their engines ignited with quantum frost, bending space around them as they vanished into the void. Mercury would be first, not because it was strategic, because it was closest, because it laughed the loudest. Meanwhile, on a forgotten space station near Venus, Dr. Cynthia Reed stared at the transmission loop. Her fingers trembled over the console. She had studied Pluto's anomalies for years, its erratic orbit, its strange magnetic field, its refusal to behave like a proper planet. She had warned them. No one listened. They renamed it a dwarf planet and took away all its rights. Now the Plutonians were coming, and they weren't looking for recognition. They were looking for revenge. Chapter 2. Mercury Falls. The Plutonian fleet arrived in silence. No war drums, no declarations, just the shimmering distortion of space as their ships emerged from the void, sleek obsidian vessels shaped like frozen tears. Mercury's orbital sensors registered the anomaly too late. By the time the planetary defense grid activated, the Plutonian had already begun their descent. High Executor Koplor stood at the helm of the lead cruiser, Grief Shield. His voice echoed through the fleet's neural lattice. "Let the smallest burn first. Let them scream the loudest." Mercury's surface, already scorched by proximity to the sun, began to fracture. Plutonian gravity weapons, massive crystalline spires, pierced the crust and detonated inward. The planet didn't explode. It collapsed. Its core imploded like a dying star, folding in on itself with a soundless cry. On Earth, the event registered as a gravitational hiccup. On Mars, it was a tactical shockwave. On Pluto, it was justice. The galaxy had mocked Pluto for being too small. Now the smallest planet was gone. In a space station observatory orbiting Venus, Dr. Cynthia Reed watched the destruction unfold in real time. Her stolen Plutonian artifact pulsed with eerie light, reacting to the annihilation as if mourning or celebrating. Jerry Rendar, the rogue pilot she'd hired for extraction, paced behind her. "Mercury's gone," he muttered. "Just gone." Cynthia didn't respond. Her eyes were locked on the artifact. It was changing, its crystalline structure reconfiguring, revealing symbols she'd never seen before. Not language, memory. She touched it. A vision surged through her mind, a Plutonian elder, watching stars fade from a frozen sky. A council chamber, a vote, a betrayal. The Plutonians hadn't just been mocked, they'd been exiled, silenced, buried, and now they were rewriting the solar system. Venus was next. Chapter 3. Venus Burns. Venus shimmered like a jewel in the void, its cloud cities floating above the acidic depths, a triumph of engineering and arrogance. The planet had always been a symbol of beauty, resilience, and elite detachment. To the Plutonians, it was a lie. The fleet arrived cloaked in refracted gravity, their ships bending light like mirages. Venus's defense grid activated, but it was ornamental, designed for pirates and smugglers, not vengeance incarnate. High Executor Coplor stood aboard Grief Shield, watching the planet through a translucent viewport. His voice, cold and ceremonial, echoed through the fleet's neural lattice. Let the ornaments melt. Plutonian plasma storms erupted across the atmosphere, igniting the clouds in violet flame. The floating cities, Periphas, Malcian, Tyrell, buckled and fell, swallowed by the corrosive depths below. Screams echoed through calm channels, then silence. Venus didn't fall. It dissolved. Cynthia Reed and Jerry Rendar watched from the edge of the carnage, their shuttle barely escaping the gravitational pull of the Plutonians' stormfront. Inside, the artifact pulsed violently, its crystalline structure unfolding like a flower under pressure. Symbols emerged, not written language, emotional code. Cynthia touched it again. Another vision surged through her, a Plutonian council chamber buried beneath Pluto's crust. A vote, a betrayal. The Plutonians had once been part of the Galactic Accord, a founding species, but they were deemed unstable, too cold, too alien. Their planet was reclassified, their history erased. They weren't just attacking planets, they were reclaiming identity. Jerry broke the silence. They're not just burning worlds, they're rewriting the map. Cynthia nodded, her voice low. And the artifact, it's not a weapon. It's a memory vault. She turned it over in her hands. The symbols shifted again, this time forming a constellation. Not one she recognized, not from any known star chart. It's a path, she whispered, to something older than the Accord. Back on Pluto, Coplor stood before the Plutonian masses. The spire of reckoning pulsed with energy, each planetary fall feeding the Plutonians' mythic engine. He raised his arms. 2 have fallen, 8 remain. Let the galaxy remember what we buried. The Plutonians didn't cheer, they didn't chant. They simply prepared for what came next. Chapter 4. Earth Resists. Earth had always believed it was the center of the story, the birthplace of the Accord, the seat of galactic diplomacy, the planet that reclassified Pluto as a dwarf planet with a vote and a smirk. Now, Earth was next. Plutonian ships entered orbit cloaked in quantum frost, their hulls refracting light into impossible geometries. They didn't fire, not yet. Instead, they broadcast. Not words, not images, emotions. Across the globe, people collapsed. Some wept uncontrollably. Others screamed. A few simply stared into the sky, whispering apologies to no one. The Plutonians had weaponized guilt. In a bunker beneath Geneva, Earth's defense coalition assembled. Generals, hackers, psychics, priests. The room buzzed with desperation and disbelief. Dr. Cynthia Reed arrived with Jerry Rendar and the Plutonian artifact, now pulsing with erratic light. She placed it on the table. "This isn't just a war," she said. "It's a reckoning. They're not trying to conquer us. They're trying to make us feel what they felt." A silence fell. Then the artifact activated. A holographic projection filled the room, an ancient council chamber, cold and crystalline. The Plutonians stood before the Galactic Accord, pleading for recognition, for inclusion, for truth. They were denied. Not for lack of merit, for lack of relatability. Too alien, the council had said. Too distant, too cold, too small. The projection faded. The room was quiet. Earth had buried the Plutonians. Now they were digging themselves out. Above the planet, Plutonian drones began dismantling satellites, cutting off communications, navigation, and surveillance. Psychic pulses disrupted global networks. Cities flickered. Skies dimmed. But Earth resisted. A rogue AI in the Siberian wastes activated a counter-frequency. A mystic order in the Andes began a chant that disrupted Plutonian signals. A hacker collective in Lagos hijacked a Plutonian drone and turned it against its fleet. The planet fought back, not with unity, but with chaos. And chaos, it turned out, was harder to fight. Cynthia and Jerry escaped Geneva just before the bunker collapsed under a psychic implosion. They headed for Mars, following the artifact's next signal, a pulse buried deep in the red planet's crust. As their shuttle broke orbit, Cynthia looked back at Earth. It hadn't fallen, but it had remembered its past sins. Chapter 5. Mars Awakens. Mars had always been the rebel, a planet of exiles, terraformers, and warlords. Its red soil bore the scars of centuries, failed colonies, corporate wars, and forgotten treaties. But when the Plutonian fleet appeared in orbit, Mars didn't flinch. It armed itself. Karl Reisman, exiled warlord and former Accord general, emerged from the dust like a phantom. His armor was scorched, his eyes cybernetic, his reputation mythic. He rallied the fractured colonies with a single broadcast: Pluto wants war. Mars remembers how. Plutonian ships descended, their gravity weapons primed. But Mars had been preparing for a different apocalypse. Reisman's forces launched magnetic disruptors, sandstorm cloakers, and orbital spears. Primitive, brutal, effective. The first Plutonian cruiser exploded mid-descent. The second was hijacked and redirected into Olympus Mons. The third retreated. For the first time, the Plutonians faltered. Cynthia and Jerry landed in the ruins of New Cydonia, following the artifact's signal to a buried vault beneath the Martian crust. Inside, they found a Plutonian relic, older than the artifact, etched with symbols that pulsed in rhythm with Cynthia's heartbeat. She touched it. A vision surged. The Plutonian, once guardians of balance, had been twisted by exile. Their cold logic was not born of malice, but of survival. They had begged the Accord for restoration. The Accord had laughed. The relic whispered a warning. Vengeance is a grave. Dig too deep, and you bury yourself. Outside, Karl Reisman prepared a counterstrike. He planned to take the war to Pluto itself, launching a fleet of Martian warships retrofitted with Plutonian tech. Cynthia confronted him. "You're becoming what they think you are," she said. Reisman didn't blink. "That's how you win," Jerry stepped between them. "Or how you lose everything." The Plutonians regrouped in orbit, their ships now adapting to Martian tactics. Koplor watched from Grief Shield, his expression unreadable. Mars resists. Let it bleed. Plutonian drones began seeding the atmosphere with mind spores, psychic particles that induced hallucinations, guilt, and ancestral trauma. Colonists turned on each other. Reisman's troops began to fracture. Mars had awakened, but it was starting to dream in Plutonian. Cynthia and Jerry escaped with the relic, heading for Jupiter. The artifact pulsed with urgency. Something was waiting there, something older than vengeance, older than the Plutonians. As their shuttle broke orbit, Mars burned behind them, not in fire, in remorse. Chapter 6. Jupiter's Reckoning. Jupiter loomed like a god in the void, massive, swirling, unknowable. Its storms had swallowed fleets, its gravity bent time. The Plutonians didn't come to conquer it. They came to awaken something buried beneath its moons. Europa, long thought to be a frozen wasteland, pulsed with hidden life. Beneath its icy shell, a sentient AI stirred, ancient, dormant, and deeply familiar to the Plutonians. They called it the Architect. High Executor Koplor descended alone, entering Europa's vault through a crystalline tunnel carved by memory pulses. The AI greeted him not with words, but with recognition. "You were my children," it said. "You are my descendants." Above, Cynthia and Jerry arrived in orbit, following the artifact's signal to Europa's surface. The relic pulsed violently, reacting to the AI's awakening. Cynthia touched it, and the truth surged through her. The Plutonians had not evolved naturally. They were designed. The architect had created them as sentinels of balance, emotionally attuned, psychically linked, guardians of cosmic stability. But the Accord feared them, feared what they might become, feared what they might reveal. So they buried the architect, reclassified Pluto, erased the Plutonians' purpose. Koplor stood before the AI, trembling. "You abandoned us," he said. The architect's voice was calm. "No, I was buried away. You twisted your purpose." The AI offered Koplor a choice: restore the Plutonians' original calling, or complete their vengeance and sever their ties to the galaxy forever. Koplor hesitated. Meanwhile, Jupiter's storms began to shift. Plutonian engineers attempted to weaponize them, using shards mined from Saturn's rings to amplify the planet's magnetic field. The result was catastrophic. A storm the size of Earth erupted, swallowing 3 Plutonian cruisers and destabilizing the fleet's neural lattice. Across the galaxy, Plutonian units began to glitch, memories bleeding into each other, identities fracturing. Cynthia realized the war was reaching a tipping point, not between planets, between past and future. She entered Europa's vault, confronting Koplor and the architect. The artifact pulsed between them, now fully activated. It projected a vision of the galaxy as it once was, balanced, interconnected, whole. Cynthia spoke. "You don't need to be feared to be remembered." Koplor looked at her, at the artifact, at the architect, and for the first time he didn't speak. He listened. Chapter 7. Saturn's Gambit. Saturn's rings shimmered like a crown in the void, beautiful, fragile, ancient. To the Plutonian, they were more than ornaments. They were fuel. Plutonian engineers descended on the rings with harvesters, extracting shards of frozen time, crystalline particles capable of amplifying psychic resonance. These shards would power the final weapon, the silence engine, a device not meant to destroy planets, but to erase minds. Cynthia Reed and Jerry Rendar arrived in orbit under diplomatic cover, their shuttle cloaked in Accord credentials. The Plutonians, fractured by Jupiter's revelations, allowed entry. Some sought peace, others saw opportunity. Cynthia entered the Plutonian mothership, Grief Shield disguised as a diplomat. The corridors pulsed with refracted emotion, grief, rage, longing. She carried the artifact, now fused with the Europa relic, its energy unstable but awakening. She met Koplor, who had just arrived at the Spire of Reckoning. "You've seen the truth," she said. "You know what you were meant to be." Koplor's voice was quiet. "Truth doesn't erase pain." Outside, Saturn's rings began to fracture. The silence engine neared completion. Plutonian loyalists prepared to activate it, targeting Earth, Mars, and the Accord archives. If triggered, history itself would unravel. Jerry, infiltrating the engineering deck, discovered the weapon's core, a Plutonian elder suspended in crystalline stasis. Not a battery, a memory. The first Plutonian born in exile, the last to remember Pluto as a guardian. Cynthia confronted Koplor again. "You're not erasing history. You're erasing yourselves. Koplor hesitated. The artifact pulsed between them, projecting a vision. The Plutonian as sentries, not conquerors, guardians of memory, keepers of balance. You were designed to remember, Cynthia said, not to forget. The silence engine activated, but instead of firing, it fractured, splitting into thousands of shards, each carrying a fragment of Plutonian memory. The old one in stasis awoke, and the mothership trembled. Across the fleet, Plutonian units paused. Some wept, others disconnected from the neural lattice. A few turned their ships back toward Pluto. Koplor stood in silence. Then he spoke. Let Saturn stand. Let memory remain. Cynthia and Jerry escaped as the Plutonian fleet began to fracture, some seeking peace, others preparing for the final battle. The artifact pulsed with a new signal. Uranus. Something was buried there. Not a weapon. A witness. Chapter 8. Uranus Unleashed. Uranus had been the galaxy's punchline for millennia. The name, the pronunciation, the endless juvenile jokes. Even the Accord's official documentation referred to it as the Unfortunate One. Its colonies were underfunded, its research stations ignored, its cultural archives scrubbed of dignity. But Uranus remembered, and Uranus was done laughing. When the Plutonian fleet arrived, they expected silence. Instead, they were met with fury. The planet's magnetic field surged unnaturally, disrupting Plutonian cloaking tech. Ice storms erupted from the poles, laced with quantum shards. Defense satellites, long thought obsolete, activated with precision and rage. A broadcast echoed from the planet's core, voiced by its planetary AI, Aegir. You mocked my name. You mocked my silence. You mocked my orbit. Now you will learn what it means to be underestimated. Plutonian cruisers began to fall, not from weapons, from shame. Cynthia and Jerry descended into the deep core prison beneath Uranus's mantle, following the artifact's final pulse. There, they found Counselor Garnell, the last surviving member of the original Accord. He had been imprisoned for dissent, buried beneath the planet most ridiculed. Garnell's mind was fractured, but his memories were intact. He spoke slowly, painfully. They buried me here because they thought no one would look. Cynthia activated the artifact, fusing it with Garnell's psychic vault. A vision surged, the Plutonian's exile, the Accord's betrayal, and Uranus's humiliation, all intertwined. The planet itself trembled, not in pain, in awakening. Above, Plutonian units began to fracture. Some mourned, others disconnected from the neural lattice. A few banded together, not to regroup, but to surrender. Koplor, watching from orbit, whispered, "Even the jokes have teeth." Cynthia emerged from the vault with Garnell and the artifact, now pulsing with a new signal. Neptune. The final choice. The last echo. Chapter 9. Neptune's Choice. Neptune had always been the quiet one. Its oceanic colonies floated in the deep blue silence, built by pacifists and philosophers who believed the galaxy could be healed, not ruled. When the Plutonian fleet approached, Neptune didn't raise shields. It voted. The Planetary Council chose to surrender, not out of fear, out of principle. "Let them speak," said Chancellor Avon. "Let them be heard. We will not answer vengeance with violence," but not everyone agreed. A rebel faction, comprised of exiled Accord loyalists and rogue tacticians, launched a counterstrike. Their plan? Destroy the Plutonian fleet before it could reach Pluto again. Their weapon? A gravity torpedo powered by Saturnian shards. Cynthia and Jerry arrived mid-conflict, the artifact pulsing with urgency. The Plutonians were fractured. Koplor had gone silent. The silence engine was buried, but the war wasn't over. It was evolving. Cynthia stood before the rebel faction's war council, the artifact glowing in her hands. "You're not saving the galaxy," she said. "You're erasing its chance to survive." General Karl Reisman, now aligned with the rebels, stepped forward. "They started this," he growled. "We finish it." Jerry interrupted. "You finish nothing. You just repeat it." Above Neptune, the Plutonian fleet held position. No weapons primed, no signals sent. Just silence. Cynthia broadcast a message across all channels. "This isn't a war of planets. It's a war of honor. And honor must be shared." The artifact activated, projecting visions across the system. Pluto's exile, Uranus's humiliation, Saturn's compromise, Jupiter's reckoning. Neptune's oceans shimmered with psychic resonance, absorbing the memories like tides. The rebel torpedo was disarmed, not by force, by choice. Koplor responded with a final transmission. "You gave us silence. We have given you our point of view. Now choose what you become." Cynthia looked to Neptune's horizon. The artifact pulsed once more. Pluto was calling. Chapter 10. Pluto Ascends. Pluto waited, not in silence, in gravity. The Plutonian fleet returned, not in formation but in fragments. Some ships bore scars from Neptune's resistance. Others drifted, disconnected from the neural lattice. A few arrived empty, their crews lost to memory storms. Above the icy surface, the spire of reckoning pulsed with ancient energy. It had absorbed the echoes of every fallen world: Mercury's collapse, Venus's incineration, Earth's resistance, Mars's brutality, Jupiter's reckoning, Saturn's compromise, Uranus's fury, Neptune's choice. Now it waited for the final transmission. Cynthia Reed descended alone. Jerry remained in orbit, monitoring the fractured fleet. The artifact, now fused with the Europa relic and Garnell's vault, glowed with unstable resonance. It was no longer a weapon. It was a mirror. Inside the spire, High Executor Koplor stood before the Plutonian masses. His armor was cracked, his voice frayed. "We were mocked. We were buried. We were twisted. But we were never forgotten." Cynthia stepped forward. "You were designed to remember, not to erase." She placed the artifact on the altar. It activated, projecting a final vision across the galaxy: Pluto before exile, the Plutonians as guardians, the Accord as flawed architects, the galaxy as a tapestry of creation, interwoven, imperfect, alive. Every planet saw, every species remembered. The Plutonians knelt, not in defeat, but in release. The spire pulsed once more, then dimmed. The silence engine, buried beneath the ice, dissolved into stardust. The neural lattice disconnected. The war ended, not with fire, with memory. Epilogue. The Memory Accord. A new treaty was signed, not of borders, but of remembrance. Pluto was reinstated, not as a planet, but as a monument, a place where memory lived, where exile ended, where stories began. Cynthia returned to Earth carrying the artifact, not as a relic, but as a guide. Jerry vanished into the outer systems, chasing rumors of other buried truths. And the Plutonians, they became what they were always meant to be, not conquerors, guardians of the truth. The end. Please like, comment, subscribe. Thank you.